Hi everybody, welcome to another video. So before I start, just to say thanks to all the people subscribing and that, it is much appreciated. And also just a quick apology to apologise for the poor quality in some points. Now, if it goes a bit dark, you'll find that the video is actually not particularly good quality. I got a new camera, and on my old camera I always used to set that up on manual settings, which seemed to work fine, but this one didn't really seem to like it. So this was at the period I was experimenting with different settings, and it didn't actually quite work with this. But I've got it sussed now, but there are a few videos that are coming up where some of the darker stuff is a bit grainy and not particularly brilliant. So apologies for that, but I think, as I say, I think I'm there now anyway. So what we're looking at today, we're looking at a primer gun. Well, it's called an R500. It's by a company called Aeropro, or it's sold under Aeropro, Chinese gun. I say a primer gun, you can actually get this in various different guises, which I have. I got it with a 1.3 and a 1.5 tip and a 2mm tip. So what's in it today, what you're looking at, is the 2mm tip, using it for high build primer. Now, if you're more interested in the smaller tip sizes for base coat and for clear coat, I'm sure I did the rest of this tank with this gun. I can't quite remember, I haven't looked back at the videos yet, but I'm pretty sure I did. But I will get a separate video up using the 1.3. I haven't even used the 1.5 yet, but I'll get a separate video up using the 1.5. But I wanted to concentrate more on this as a primer gun, and I know people don't watch the primer videos as much as other videos, that's quite obvious, but for the money this thing is, you can buy these on AliExpress, which is normally the best place to get them, shipped from China for somewhere in the region of about 29 to 30 US dollars, plus a bit of shipping, etc. So it'll cost you about 40 US dollars to get them. I paid 60 US dollars in total for this, and as I say, I got 3 different tips which come with 3 different needles and also 3 different caps. Now, because I've mentioned the caps, although the caps are marked differently, they all look exactly the same. They do a 1.7 as well, which I haven't got. So I would only presume that the 1.7 is the same as well. So although the caps are marked differently, they're exactly the same. They look exactly the same. The size of the holes is exactly the same, in the same place, etc, etc. So they are, apart from the markings, the same, which isn't entirely unusual. A lot of manufacturers tend to do that. So you really only need the tip and the needle if you're changing these different sizes, but you get the cap as well. So for 60 US dollars, including shipping and including tax in the UK, I got myself effectively 3 spray guns in one. A 1.3, which you can use for base coat and clear coat, a 1.5, which you can use for primer sealer, wet on wet primer, etc. And this in 2.0. I didn't want it in 1.7 because the primer I use is quite thick. It's quite a high build primer. If you're using it for repairs and that, it's quite handy, but it does like a bigger tip. So I've got an F160, an ANI F160 in 1.9 that I really, really like. And this is a 2.0. So is it any good? I know he's rabbiting on about stuff and not actually getting to the point, but I do tend to do that, but some people like it. It's actually all right. I thought it was a really, really good gun. It's a very loose copy of the W400 Iwata, so the Bellaria and the other W400s. I say a loose copy because it just mimics the way the tip seals, etc., and looks similar, but nothing is the same, if that makes sense. What I'll do when I do the separate video for the 1.3, we'll do a little intro where we'll take the 2 guns apart and just have a look, see what the difference is and see what is interchangeable. But it won't be, the tip might interchange actually, I'm thinking to myself, but it's probably going to be nothing. But we'll do it more thoroughly, and as I say, and that's because more people will watch the non-primer video than will watch the primer video. But I wanted to do it separately because my thinking behind this is actually a really good value for money primer gun, because it works very, very well. And lays the, in this case, high build primer down very well. And you can be looking at $40 US, you know, what's that, 32, 33 GB pounds at the moment with this thing landed. So you have to shop around, because you can pay double, you can even pay treble for it, for that if you want. So you know, you have to shop around, but I just look on AliExpress and just found the cheapest place, including postage, I could find. You know, you're getting the same products, and not as if you're getting an inferior product. So yeah, I simply looked for the cheapest place I could find. But one of the things I've noticed with this, I've already had a problem with it, and it's not a huge problem, I suppose. Having said it's not a huge problem, with most guns you don't get any problems at all, but with what I've had with it is the trigger sticking. So the actual activator, so the air, where you push on the trigger, it pushes on an activator which normally will send a pin backwards or a cylinder backwards to allow air to go through the gun and through to the tip. And it's just sticking. So what I've had to do from the outside, I didn't want to take it apart yet, and there's a reason for that. But what I did was I just put a bit of petroleum jelly on the outside of the, it's like a brass plunger that goes in and out. I just put a little bit on the outside of that, and that seems to lubricate it well enough. The reason I haven't taken it apart to clean it, because I suspect, and I could be wrong, but I suspect when you take these things apart, they're actually not made particularly well. So a lot of things will be put together and effectively Loctited in, you know, some kind of thread lock or something used to stop the component coming apart, but they also use it to seal it. And I've seen that in a lot of cheap guns. They're effectively put together in fact, you know, to necessitate someone using it 3 or 4 times and not getting a problem and not needing to take it apart. So I haven't tried to take it apart yet. I could be totally wrong, but I don't think I will be. But as I say, I found that putting a little bit of lubricant on the outside of the plunger and just activating the plunger brings it along, and it obviously lubricates the seal enough to allow it to go up and down. Not a problem you really want, not a huge pain at the moment. And I know somebody that has got or recently bought a SATA 1500, and they had the same problem, and that was a new SATA gun, which, you know, you would expect a SATA gun to probably not give you that problem straight away. So all I'm trying to say is it does happen. So I'm not simply saying that because this is a cheap gun, it's got a problem with it. But all I can tell you is that I have had a problem with it, and I haven't had the same problem with any gun, I don't think. I've had a problem with some of my water's leaking slightly, but no, not a problem where it actually is seizing up on the trigger. But, you know, it does happen. But I do look after the gun, so I can only think that it's not a particularly durable design. But yeah, you can see me taking the cap off there. It's made very, very similar to the W400, although I wouldn't think it's the same quality. It takes the same cup, so the thread is exactly the same. So if you need it, bear in mind that an Iwata cup, genuine Iwata cup, will actually cost you more than the gun and the cup. So I suppose if you want a cheap cup, it might be worth buying the gun just to try it and get yourself a cup. But yeah, I mean, it does a reasonable job for the sort of money, and I would put it as a really good budget primer gun, because, as I say, I've been impressed with the results of it. I think it will last reasonably well. As I said, I've had a few niggles with mine, but I don't think it's anything that would really put me off buying another one. So yeah, I mean, I use this for primer. I use this at 2 bar. It's actually got, it flows quite a lot of material, more than the 400 version would do. So I use this on 3.5 turns out, full fluid. So you turn the needle adjuster all the way in and back it off 3.5 turns, and that's what I used it at. But you'll find that it's still increasing the amount of fluid flowing through up to 5 turns out. So you know it's capable of actually flowing quite a lot, which I like for a primer gun, a high build primer gun. You like it to flow a lot, but I don't think you can argue with the results. Obviously this will need sanding, but you can see by the results it actually did really well. So yeah, highly recommended. Now coming up in a minute in about 3 times normal speed, I'm just showing you, because I spray lots of different things, and this sort of stuff is basically to keep family happy, but I thought I'd sling it in at the end because it actually shows it as being quite a universal primer gun. You can use this thing for anything, which for a big gun I was quite surprised by. You can back the fluid off and it still seems to flow enough high build material, because sometimes I find that if you back a gun off, say a 1.8 or a 1.7, and you want less material, and you back that off so you know the needle's not pulling back as much to let the material through, I find that they can clog up, whereas this thing didn't. And I suppose that's because it's a 2.0 tip rather than a 1.7, but I could use this in any position I wanted to, and I found it actually flowed really well. And I'm only using my standard prime, which is U-Pol 2025. It's just a relatively cheap high build primer, and it was only thinned by 10%, which is the standard sort of amount I thin this stuff by. So it worked really well on all of it. So I would highly recommend it to anybody that wants a cheap primer gun. If it goes wrong in a year, then you're going to have to throw it away and start again, which in today's day and age maybe not the best way of looking at things, but financially that's what it would be really. But yeah, I mean, it would certainly reward you with pretty good results while it was working, and maybe I was just a little bit unlucky. I don't know, maybe you guys have got one and you could tell me I was unlucky. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed me rambling on as I normally do. You keep watching the videos and I'll keep them coming, and as I say, I will get a video up of it in 1.3, and that's for base coat and clear coat, and we'll do a little dissection of the W400 and just see what's interchangeable, whether the tips are interchangeable. I don't think they are, but the design is definitely a copy of the W400. Anyway guys, as I said, once again, thanks for watching as always. Thank you very much, bye bye.